Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Mayshad CHOICE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm Nazara, founder and CEO of Mayshad CHOICE, the New York-based company of the Mayshad Group, and I'm here today with Jan Dams, our VP of Development, and two very dynamic women in diversity, equity, and inclusion from New York City, Jacqueline Ebanks and Deborah Martin Owens.
Hi, everyone. So incredibly thrilled to be with you, particularly for this session this afternoon. My name is Jan Mercer-Dams. I'm the Vice President of U.S. Development with the Mayshad Group. Mayshad Group is an ecosystem of brands for women by women, and we are excited to launch our digital series to support live events when we're all able to go back with each other live face-to-face in New York City and beyond, supplemented and complemented with a technology platform that helps women to connect with each other and with the companies, causes, brands, and institutions and organizations that champion women's equity. We're incredibly thrilled to bring you our diversity, equity, and inclusion series now in the digital space for all of you to be introduced to Jacqueline and Deborah.
So Jacqueline Ebanks is the first executive director for New York City's Commission on Gender Equality. Jacqueline worked for 3 decades to promote economic justice for women, girls, and marginalized communities. Deborah Martin Owens, executive director of diversity and inclusion for the New York City Bar Association, which consists of 160 law firms and corporate legal departments. Hello, Jacqueline. Hi, Deborah.
Hello, Nessa.
Jacqueline, I have a question for you to start. As we discussed a little earlier in our conversation, we are all aware of the role that we have to take on into this social distancing and into COVID-19's measures. Working from home, not sending our kids to school, limiting our moves to grocery shopping. But I am sure there is an entire underground logistic that is happening here in New York, and New York being really at the center of the eyes and the focus right now on the media on a global level. I know I have friends and family internationally that are contacting me every day to check on me. I would like you to tell us about how is this affecting your work, how in your work in diversity and equity, what is the link with COVID-19 and how to handle the crisis?
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Neza, you are right. Certainly, as everybody knows, New York City is at the epicenter of this pandemic in the United States. And clearly, what is important to both, to our mayor and is the issue of equity. Are we responding to this crisis in a way that we're addressing the needs of all New Yorkers, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, or background? That is front and center for over 70 city agencies and all the leadership there. And so we're doing our best to be in communication with those in need and to be responsive. And you're also right that we, as citizens, must do our best to adhere to the request of our leadership. Because without our social distancing, without our adherence to these guidelines, we cannot beat this pandemic. I just want to say also that I would encourage everyone, when you can, to listen to the mayor's briefing. His press conferences are daily. When you can, do listen, because it's a very transparent conversation, and guidance is given at all of these press conferences. I do want to add, in addition...
What it is exactly, and where can we find it?
So the press conference comes across on all media. And so, you know, if you have a local, like I have in the Bronx here, News 12, it's always on, and it varies from day to day. But he always gives during the week a daily press conference. I also want to add that we have a number. You can text COVID to 692, and that will put you in what's called Notify NYC, and you will get regular updates via text. If anybody's in an emergency, health or physical danger, 911, only time that we use that, and 311 to get assistance in other circumstances. And last but not least, this is certainly stressful for our mental well-being. It's a very difficult time for everyone and all families. For mental health, NYC Thrive, 1-888 NYC Well. So I just wanted to give those resources up front. And please link with the Commission on Gender Equity via Twitter at Gender Equity NYC and Facebook, Gender Equity NYC, and Instagram, it's NYC Gender Equity. And we at the Commission and many of our sister city agencies were constantly pushing out resources. So those are great tools that we can use to help navigate this period.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So, you know, it's interesting as we think through this period of time now. So many of us are 1 week in, many of us are 3 weeks in from the new normal of remote working. And many of us think of this as something that impacts us at the individual level. Others of us think about how it impacts our families, our communities, our friends domestically and abroad. And what does this mean for us in this moment in time? And Deborah, you and I talked about a week and a half ago now, and wow, so much has changed in that week and a half, but we've talked about how outside of college, this is really, as adults, the one moment in time that we now have to ourselves to really think through what will this mean for us, both as we're going through it and then as we come out to the other side. Talk to us a little bit about what this means for you during this time.
Well, you know, I'm at the New York City Bar Association, which is a nonprofit. So we were one of the last to sort of, you know, work from home requirement. So we've been home now for maybe 2 weeks and 2 days today. And so the first week, well, when the mayor decided to close the schools is when I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. I wasn't prepared. I think he made the decision that Saturday or Sunday. And so now I'm home Monday once we got the email from the senior leadership at the city bar. And that first week, I think I was in a cloud, and I shared this with Jan. I was such in a cloud. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. This is really happening. And what do I do with this new sort of work from home? And I have the privilege, and I say privilege, to work from home because many people don't. They have to still go in. Are, you know, first responders, people in the healthcare industry. But the first week, I would say, it was a real big blur for me. It was like, what am I doing? I'm getting up. Do I still get up when I normally do? Do I still have my breakfast? You know, that time that I normally would be on the train. Now I can start work at like 7 a.m. All that was really tough. So the first week, I could tell you I didn't know what I was doing. And then the second week, I was becoming more of, okay, this is what's happening. And certainly watching the news every day didn't help, right? Because that's doom and gloom. And depending on how you feel about, you know, who's giving you that information doesn't always feel stable. So it was very difficult. So what I would do in this time, so now I'm in going into my third week, while I'm trying to focus on this time that I have now is time I haven't had since, you know, graduating from, you know, graduate school. And that was like, you know, 17 years ago. So I bought a bunch of books from Amazon. I started looking at the books that I have. You know, I started saying, okay, all these things that I sign up for, these articles online, these blogs I never read, well, I have time to read them. So I've been using this time to sort of say, okay, Deborah, how can you bring more value? I think for us as women, we're always pushing out the value to people, right? We're always saying how we can, you know, if someone calls you, oh, let me help her, let me help him. But we never really do for ourselves. And so this time that I'm using, I found someone that does like beginner's yoga, and I took 2 sessions. I struggled through the 15 minutes, but I did it because I'm more of a spin girl. But it just, all this time to sort of figure out how to give back has been very new for me, and I think I could see for lots of women is probably very new. So I would say in this time, figure out what reading you'd like to do, what articles that you've been putting off, especially if you are someone who subscribes to articles and you don't open them, right? Start opening them and giving back the time that you would normally give to yourself, normally lose, I guess, on the train, right? Because you're kind of making sure that, you know, you get to work safely. Now you can focus and say, what can I do to give back to myself? So I have 2 hours. My commute is 40 minutes each way to and from work. So I'm using the 40 minutes, each way to give to myself every day. And it's hard. The second week I struggled, but now I'm kind of used to it now. I read a couple of articles a day.
And I think
to it that
I think
go ahead.
I think Deborah
Jacqueline.
makes an excellent point about self-care, and there are the various articles that tell how women, especially women in positions who work and in positions of leadership, that we're still also carrying the brunt of the burden at home for caregiving. And one of the questions I ask myself about this period, for those of us who have this luxury, is to really think about how you are going to come out of this period.
Yes.
Right? And I think this issue of self-care is an important issue to move forward with, to help us be stronger, resilient. I also think one ought to think about how you contribute to community. One of the paradoxes of this pandemic is that, we tend to want to volunteer and go out and give of ourselves. And here it is that the solution is to stay in. And so that's creating, new ways to give and to share and to contribute. And I think we should be mindful of that as well, and think about how we are going to sustain these efforts, the healthy efforts, as we sort of unpack, I think, a huge amount of negativity through this period where we're sort of, it's enforced, enforced self-care, if you will.
And you both are champions and leaders in the DEI space as well. How during this time have you taken that ideology, those principles, and infused them into the teams and into your partnering relationships as well?
Sure. So so Jackie's a goddess. I'm just happy to be here. But I have a small team. It's about 4 of us, including the team. And so the first thing I did, because the team is it's a younger team. I don't want to say millennials because then they get, the bad rap, and I don't want them to have that. But they're younger than me. And so one of the things I said, when it first happened, I said, what's comfortable for you? Do you want to talk? Because I have an open door policy. My door is really open. They can run in back and forth, ask me a bunch of questions about work, life, or whatever. And so I said to them, what works for you? Do you want to do a Zoom every week, twice a week? Do you want to talk on the phone? Like, what do you want to do? And I allowed them to tell me what works. And they were like, we like to do Zoom twice a week. And so we picked twice a week. It's always on a Friday, but then they pick another day. So like it's tomorrow and Friday. Why I picked Friday, I was very focused because I wanted to make sure, okay, how was your week? What were some of the good things? Because you have to remember that I lead a group of young women. They're young women. They have their first apartments or they're living with roommates. And this is kind of hard for them too, right? Because their whole life is outside of their homes. And so I wanted to be really, understanding of what this means for them. I know what it means for me, but I'm a little older and I have a bigger support system. But I wanted to be focused on them of what works. So Fridays I'll say, okay, we need to work on X, Y, and Z for next week, but tell me, what are your plans this week? You're going to arrange a closet, you're going to read a book, like whatever it is for them, because they need to be supported. They need to be supported.
Yeah. No, completely. I agree with that. I think it certainly depends on where you are in the phase of sort of working from home. The city itself, we pivoted about March 16th. So we're 2 weeks. And for us, it's moving close to 400,000 people to online services with the exclusion of the first responders. And so as city employees, our biggest, really navigating that process. So there was a lot of check-in. I think we're just breaking down to weekly, but there's sort of consistent check-in, making sure our systems were up. And then the other piece for us, those city agencies that are not so close to the front lines, is how are we being supportive to our colleagues on the front lines? What resources do we have that we can send? That was incredibly important to us. And then, you know, that support is supposed to be, I'm sorry.
And Jacqueline, do you feel that the communication between the people who are working from home and the ones who are in the field is being mastered, or the people who are in the field sometimes, you know, are in a total different level of urgency than the ones that are playing the role of a back office? Tell us a little bit about that relationship.
I mean, I think what has become critical, and some of the folks who don't see, is those who make our technology work, right?
Yeah.
And it is so supremely important. And you know, you have our mayor constantly updating the city. And then, you know, you will see different members of our staff out at those press conferences, again, connecting resources to New Yorkers as they are living their experiences. And we're very mindful of the challenges. I feel from my end and from my department that we're connected to the levels that we need to connect to. Because you never want to burden the front line. They have this very focused job, and it's an intensity that we understand, we respect. I think we don't understand it deeply. We see it, we respect the challenge, and we want to leave them completely free to do that. And so it is being able to escalate a situation if we hear of something in the field. I manage a commission that is a 32 person commission with 26 members who have extension into various communities. So feedback from those members of our commission is so essential to make sure we understand what's happening on the ground, because what we care about as public servants is our all New Yorkers being well taken care of. Yeah. And that's the central piece for us. Right. And then we take it from there.
What about inequalities? You know, there is a gap in gender pay. There are racial inequalities going on. There are the issues that have always been there and that you work on all the time. And how in these times, you know, can we tackle those issues to create less inequality, facing a virus that somehow puts us all equal when it comes to how we can transmit it and how we can all get it. So can you tell us a little bit about that, about how the city is handling those inequalities now and creating more equity on that sense?
Right. New York City is a city that recognizes diversity, champions diversity, and our goal is to treat everyone equitably, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, or background. And so that's in our DNA, in good times and in bad. And I would say what we do know is that in challenging times, such as a pandemic, existing inequalities are heightened, right? So Deborah just talked about the privilege of being able to stay at home. A salaried worker has certain privileges, right? If you're an hourly worker, greater vulnerability. As the mayor had to make the very difficult decision to close public schools, one of his greatest concerns was public schools is where many children receive lunch, breakfast, receive their meals. How will those children, how will those families be taken care of? And you will note there was specific discussion around that, right? We created enrichment centers for children of first responders so that because the parents had to be at work, those children will be specifically taken care of. So, and you know, the First Lady and I were fortunate enough to have our op-ed published yesterday in The Hill, where we talked about pay equity, today being Equal Pay Day, and really recognizing the loss of income, that systemic loss, means that we put women and women of color in greater jeopardy at times of crisis. And those are things that you call attention to consistently. And hopefully, speaking about when we come out of this, it's not about 200 years as we're projecting. We need to solve for pay inequity now. And we can no longer afford this. There's so much in our society that we can't control, right? and that we need to be healthy, economically well, we need to be healthy, we need to be safe so that we can survive through difficult times.
Deborah, in your work with firms and companies, as we think about now this new normal of remote working and how companies are going to continuously work on building culture, on hiring, retention, promotion strategies, have you been able to have those conversations with your member firms and companies
Sure.
yet? And what's the feedback that you're getting from them?
It's interesting. This morning, in fact, I had a conversation with a major technology firm that is sort of trying to figure out how they can sort of engage their diverse attorneys. And it's really hard because the way it works in a legal setting is that people think it's all about merit and doing this amazing work, and you will get promoted and you will get opportunities to advance in your career. But sometimes it's also about being in front of these sort of stakeholders that make the decisions. And if you are now working from home, you're not in front of that stakeholder. And if you only had the opportunity to walk past that person's office and just say hello, you no longer have those opportunities. So I'm trying to think about ways in the conversation this morning about how we can engage people who are the stakeholders who make decisions about your future of your career, be involved when they're not in your face. And so those are some of the conversations we've had. I'll tell you what's really tough, because as long as, people need to focus on the economy, and I hate to say, because I really believe the pandemic is health and not wealth, but, we are focused on it being a wealth issue. People are not focused on the fact that a diverse person, you haven't engaged with in a week. They're focused on their bottom line, their business. So we have to be creative. And some of the things that I'm thinking about is creating some webinars for our diverse lawyers in which they can sort of participate and say, okay, you're not in front of this group anymore. What can you do to be more impactful? What can you do to have more engagement? What can you do to get in front of these people? Because I will tell you, no matter what happens with the pandemic, at the end of this year, people's careers are going to be decided on, right? They're going to either get the promotion or get the letter saying, you need to move on. And so it's not going to stop. The world is not going to stop, while this is happening. Right. And so it's really important for us to focus on how we can position these diverse lawyers to say, okay, I know this is happening, but what can I do? Can I find an article and send it to that stakeholder and say, I saw this article, I think this is a way we can deal with our business with COVID. It's going to be more strategy and less of a touch point. And that's kind of hard because people of color, and I'll say this, and underrepresented women, that's just not how we grew up. Our base is community, right? We're doing community right now. And so it's difficult.
And Deborah, I 100% agree with you. I think one of the things we can offer to those in leadership is that they have an equal responsibility to be intentional about their strategy, right? And to ensure that all the voices of their company or their unit is heard. And so I think a good manager, and to give sort of incentive to good managers, is how are you keeping in touch with each and every one of your employees? Yeah. What channels are you creating so that each and every employee has this opportunity to be vocal and to be visible? How often, I was sharing earlier how I have, very surprisingly to me, become a fan of the webinars and the video conferencing. I didn't think I would. But part of it is I enjoy seeing the faces that I can't see every day anymore. Yeah. And I'm fortunate I have my team is 8 or 12 people, so it's not a lot. But to create those moments, those touch points, I think, as a manager, we ought to take that responsibility on ourselves and to do that, so that it's not always on the employee who, even in normal circumstances, is busy strategizing to be visible, right? And so we should see that as our responsibilities too.
And do we think during this moment in time that what we're experiencing right now actually offers a sense of possibility and opportunity, knowing that we're now being put in a position where we must communicate differently with each other? And so kind of that the status quo has been disrupted, and in this period of disruption, does that bring additional opportunities for women, for underrepresented groups in the workplace?
Oh, absolutely. I think more than ever, I mean, to Jackie's point, it is on the manager, but it's also on us. And I think it's hard because it's not something that we're intuitive with that, but you really do own your career, whether you feel like you like your career or not, you do own it. And to sort of have the, now that COVID is here, it's a part of our life, and I think it's going to be a part of our life for a long time. My theories are sometimes if companies can think of a way to keep us all home and not have all this beautiful commercial rent, they would do it. But I feel like it is part of the manager's role, to Jackie's point, the manager's role to be sort of engaging, but also our role to figure out how to get in front of this, because we own our careers. And it's not something that people want to feel because they feel like, well, I don't know what to do with my career. You've got to figure out, that's going to be your number one job, to figure out how you can own your career and what you can do. You're living in a time right now, it's 2020, where you have the internet, you have Zoom, you have Skype, you have all kinds of things, free courses. I signed up for a course the other day on Corsica. I never even heard of it prior to COVID. And so to me, you own your career, and you need to do the work that goes behind that. And it's hard work. It is not always glamorous to sit up, and try to figure out how to push your career forward, but you have to do it.
We are blessed to be working from home, as you said, because they are the people that have to still be working and exposing themselves. And you also have the ones that unfortunately don't have a peaceful environment at home. So I would like to talk about domestic violence, and how do we have any data or numbers on what is going on now with domestic violence? Jacqueline, would you like to take this question?
I would say that we are deeply concerned in the city about a real possibility of an underreporting of domestic violence right now, because we are basically required to stay at home. And if home is unhealthy and violent, then how does one who is living in that situation have the opportunity to report, right? So that's really vulnerable. We have moved to the virtual provision of these services, and they are being provided. I will send you at the end of this call some of the numbers. Every borough, all the services are being provided, direct lines into our Family Justice Center to have access to services. But we continue to be deeply concerned. I gave our Twitter handle and our Facebook. That's really important. If you can be a resource to someone else, you may have to be that person who transmits the information to them to connect them to resources, leverage that. And when I send these numbers, they're too numerous to mention right now because they're one per borough, but we're open every weekday and open on weekends as well. Service provision continues. Nothing that has not stopped. The way services are being delivered has changed dramatically because of the pandemic, but no other.
Thank you very much. Do you want to go to the question? Sorry.
Yeah, just to say a little bit what Jackie says, that there are sort of these stereotypes of women or men who are facing domestic violence. And you have to really think about this. This is a time where everyone is in close quarters, and most people are living in apartments, not these palatial homes where you're in the Hollywood Hills and you're on one end and the other person is on the other. And so a little bit what Jackie and I were talking about with you guys before we started is that people are not away from their abuser. They're with their abuser all day long. And so they're not able to go to work and call and say, this is what's happening. And so we have to really think about what we do as a community. We may not know or may not believe that we know, but we do know someone that is dealing with domestic violence. They can be dealing with that verbally, physically, and we need to be sensitive. If you are not hearing from someone as often as you would hear from that person when you're at work, you're texting each other all day, they're kind of silent. Hey, check in on them, find out what's happening. The time now is not to recoil. The time is to go out, and it's different now in our community, but texting, calling, sending an email saying, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? I haven't heard from you. We normally talk. These are things that are really important so that you can get some information that can be helpful, because that person doesn't have to make the call. You can make the call on their behalf.
Thank you, Deborah. That's a very good insight. We feel we feel powerless in these times, knowing that, as we said, is people are in an environment where they are locked on with their abusers, and how can we help? How can we be sensitive? But I think as friends, as co-workers, as neighbors, we have to take on the lead on supporting these people. Jan, do you want to go with the questions from the audience?
Yes, and for everyone who's a part of our live stream today, we would love to hear your questions. So please send them over to us right now. They're being fed to me at this very moment. So first question is, the world believes that frontline workers are the first responders to whom critical concerns have been focused. But many of the frontliners are day laborers, supermarket workers, bus drivers, small business owners that are without the luxury to quarantine because they need their jobs, which speaks to the deep racial and economic inequality, even here in New York City. And specifically, given the sense that we're all here together today, we have the ability and the power to actually help other women who aren't as privileged as we are. How do we speak to these women?
Well, I can say for me, these women are the women that I grew up with. My mother was a nurse's aide. I mean, her education was no further than 10th grade. So we have these women in our families. They are the women that we know. They may be a cousin, they may be an aunt, whoever. We need to start within our own community and check in and say, is there anything I can do? If we could afford to purchase their groceries for the month, send the groceries. Yes, there are places that are still delivering groceries, all those kinds of things. Think about how you can be helpful. I even said this morning to my husband, I said, is there someone that we can buy their groceries for in our family for the month, for the next 2 months? Right now, even if they could afford, say, okay, I can buy my groceries, they may be thinking between groceries and rent, right? So those are some of the things we can start with our own family. And if not, we need to look at institutions. We need to look at United Way. What is United Way doing? They're a major nonprofit in New York City, run by a woman of color. Let's reach out to them and say, is there an opportunity that we can, help the New York Food Bank? All these places that we can reach out to and say, how can we help? Those lines, if you have an opportunity to see the lines that are for food banks, they are incredible. People are risking their lives to stand on the line for 2-3 hours at a food bank, when most of us probably just order our food from Fresh Direct. There's a way that we could support these women, and how we support them is saying, what I can do to help you. Start with your family and then go further.
No, absolutely. And I just want to remind folks, if you have a child in school who benefits from school lunches, 7:30 to 1:30, I think, every day, you can go to the school and pick up the 3 meals for the day. And I think those meals will also extend to your family as well. So be very clear. And the numbers I gave earlier, 692 COVID, you'll get the updates on the services that are available for you in New York City. So really, and to Deborah's point, if you are able to support another and to get the information and pass it to others, then that's sort of one of the better ways that you can move this forward.
There are also, I know, several restaurants in the New York City, Westchester County area as well that are offering free meals to families in need during certain times of the week as well. In addition to many GoFundMe campaigns that groups of people have gotten together to help fund, particularly meals and groceries for first line responders as well. So that's another excellent resource. Here's another question. I'm curious if you see new laws being passed for paid sick leave for all employees and freelancers for companies that are of a certain size.
So New York, go ahead, Jan.
And then the second part of that question is wondering what new laws you believe will come forward to help protect employees and their health going forward.
Can only speak to New York City.
Yes.
New York City since 2015, 2016, has extended paid sick leave and paid safe leave to hourly workers. And freelancers, should you be employed, you should have that provided within from your employer and your benefits package. But New York City has been doing this a long time, and the state has just picked up on it and extended it. So it's so important to know what you have in this city. There's a rich network, a really strong safety net. Please stay on our website at the Commission on Gender Equity. We will route you to other resources. Follow our social media. We are constantly updating to give information. And then use 311. There are data points in New York City. And if you can help others, please do so. You really shouldn't be without connections. And if there's a gap, feel free to reach out to the Commission on Gender Equity. We will run the interference necessary to make sure we're connecting people to resources.
And Jackie, that pertains to hourly workers, freelancers. Many women in our community have their own businesses, are founders,
right.
Are CEOs. And, as we know, many women are also struggling with having to, lay off workers or furlough them as well. And so, knowing that those resources are available, to us in the larger New York City, New York areas is a tremendous value.
And also to be mindful that there were certain supports provided for small business owners and MWBEs.
Yeah.
There's a litany of resources. The federal stimulus package, many of us feel it could have gone further, but it does exist. So nothing is going to take the place of sort of doing your homework, certainly if you're able. And if you're able, as you learn, be a resource to others.
Yeah.
I think that's really where we're going to help cover the information gap, and certainly make sure that this gap, the information is accurate that you disperse. But it's there, and we have, with the federal help, we have a broad network, safety net in New York City to help us navigate this field.
Yeah,
And
safety net would say after the state government, city government, and federal is nonprofits. There are 40,000 nonprofits in New York. And so they are coalescing and trying to figure out ways in which the government, has stopped at a certain point, they can move forward. New York Community Trust just came together with the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, and put together an $80 million fund that will help nonprofits give direct services to those in these communities who are struggling. So continue to be updated. Go on to newyorkcommunitytrust.org and continue to look at updates and see which nonprofits in your area are going to be able to assist you.
No, I wanted to add that it's very important to identify government-linked institutions, because there must be a lot of scams as well. And you need to make sure that you are getting your information from the right sources. So
absolutely,
for those sources. Jan, how are you doing with the questions?
We have so much coming in right now. I don't know if we're going to have time for all of this. This is amazing. Thank you, everyone who's contributing today. Another question revolves specifically around diversity, equity, and inclusion work as an academic thought of a work. And the question is, what strategies will be systematically deployed for DEI work to be continuously evolving over time after we're all back in the quote unquote the real world?
That's a tough one, because I will tell you, I'll speak for me. I'm at a nonprofit, And one of the things that is a struggle is what this work will look like once it's no longer considered a necessity, right? People are trying to eat and build their business again. And will this be something in which, a corporation or a law firm or whatever makes it a priority? I always feel like diversity and inclusion will get cut first before anything else, maybe professional development. So my sort of philosophy is a wait and see. We will really learn during hard times. Will companies will make this a priority for them? I just don't know.
And from the public sector space, what we want to do is guard against that. I think, yes, it's a likely reality, but we want to make sure that we continue to have the strong laws, and you're in New York City. I cannot stress this enough.
It's a blessing.
New York City Commission on Human Rights, some of the most rigorous human rights laws that protect us in our spaces of work, and how we navigate New York City in an economic space. Really become very familiar with that work in terms of the Commission on Gender Equity is also there. So one of the goals that we have over time, we want to build deeper partnerships with all sectors so that our value as a city is that equity, inclusion, and diversity is a key part of our DNA, right? And in a city which is as richly diverse and is indeed a minority city in this country, the largest city in this country with a ton of immigrants, this richness is something that we ought to see, that we are not New York without it, right? And so I think we should look at how we build effective partnerships through COVID and beyond COVID to ensure that we're taking care of everyone. And I just think it's part of it is a discipline and the way to make it happen. One of the things that I'm looking at and my team as we work is we had planned for several reports to come out, and that now they're delayed. But it has given us a lot of time to focus deeply on them and to say, okay, once this pandemic lifts, how do we ensure that we push these reports out so you can, bring an energy and a focus to diversity, equity, and inclusion immediately after, as we pivot from the urgency of the pandemic. And I think it's going to be important to how we rebuild our economy.
Yes.
Everybody has to be at the table. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so, again, a really powerful opportunity for New York City to lead. And I'm just going to underscore that we do have the leadership here to make that happen in the public sector. We're really looking forward to partnership with the corporate and the nonprofit sector to do so.
We do.
Here's another question. So my phone froze. Bear with me for a second. The joys of modern technology. Here we are live. All right. So within larger companies, when the coronavirus was first breaking out and spreading, there were some reports that internally from companies that employees were often feeling the target of being a part of a special group that were contributing to the spread of coronavirus, particularly Asian American employees. And let's talk about why we think that was happening during this period of time, and what can we do as leaders in the diversity, inclusion, and equity space to empower ourselves, to empower others to not behave in those ways.
This is about education. This is about people being educated and sort of broadening where they get their information from. I found this particularly hurtful for me to hear over and over again the rhetoric behind how this started. This is a worldwide pandemic. Everyone owns this health crisis. It is not from this country or that country. Right now, United States is leading in this. So is it now the American, coronavirus? No. And so I feel like the education piece is so missing in this. It is extremely hurtful that particular communities are being hurt by this. I know for me, when the AIDS epidemic came and people were very focused on a particular community, the Haitian community, and pretty much saying, well, this is where it came from, that was very hurtful as well. I think we need to be very careful, and we need to really be focused. I'm trying to walk a fine line here. Focused on, because I can really focused on where we get our information from. Is this what the CDC is saying? No? Okay. Is this what our governor is saying? What our mayor is saying? People who are leading. I think about the governor of New York. He is leading not just in our state, but throughout the country and world. And so we need to really look at where this information is coming. It is extremely hurtful. It is dangerous. It is causing communities to arm themselves who normally wouldn't be doing that. So now we have people with guns feeling they have to protect themselves. And I feel like people with more guns just creates more opportunities for people to be hurt. So for me, it's been particularly sad to see how this has sort of escalated to communities fighting against communities when this is really a health issue.
And I underscore what Deborah says, but fact is, in New York City, zero tolerance. It's a crime. It's a hate crime. Report it if you see it. Again, if you are in a corporation experiencing this, visit nyc.gov CCHR and report it. We have the laws that say this is unacceptable in our city. It is equally unacceptable in our state. And that's how we need to deal with it. And it's a crime, and you will be so punished if identified, right?
It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
And we need to stay firm about it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Unacceptable in a civilized society, if we call ourselves civilized.
But I think that for those of us that are in management leadership roles that do have decision-making powers and just power within the larger organizational setting, it's really up to us to be able to stand up for people that don't have that power too, and probably even more so now than ever, which leads me to the next question is around the fact that coronavirus COVID-19 really does not discriminate. And we see that from the number of people just around the world who have contracted it, no matter what their socioeconomic status. And here in the United States, ranging from actors to celebrities to CEOs to now Chris Cuomo, one of the main anchors at CNN. So we all know that it does not discriminate, but yet we definitely do, as we indicated here in our conversation today, see the class and the racial implications of it. And what is the balance between understanding that we also have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that the way in which it affects people that are not economically advantaged, that we don't forget that.
I can't say this enough. New York City is centered on all New Yorkers, but we're specifically focused on responding to the most vulnerable, making sure that they are strongly supported through this. And from the way we look at the issue to our interventions, some people have more resources than others to manage through this. For that, we're extremely grateful. For those who rely on public support to get there, we absolutely see it essential that we form a seamless safety net for them. And again, I think information is the key. How we communicate and connect folks to information in a timely manner will help us navigate this. And then I'd also think our everyday citizen has a responsibility to flag city government about where gaps are, because sometimes they'll be missing. Our workforce is under tremendous stress. MTA bus drivers, people are getting sick at every point, our first responders. And so we want to make sure there's been huge sacrifice from our workforce as well for this. And some of our colleagues have passed away. So there's great challenge throughout our entire system, but New York City remains committed that we're going to get through this, and we're going to help everybody to the fullest extent of our powers to get us through it.
You know, Jacqueline, when we hear you and how New York City is very strong into this equity value and embracing the diversity, does New York City get to work with other states, other cities, and to be able to lead in that example and to help them find solutions there?
I can't speak directly to it. I just know that for me, one of the key turning points of this was certainly my mayor standing as he did, and I had every confidence he was in direct communication with the governor. But when the governor said, I am speaking with the governor of New Jersey and I'm speaking with the governor of Connecticut, and they started to look at this as a regional challenge.
Yeah.
I think that was a tremendous shift in our response. And you see it now in our medical system. Our hospitals are coming across public, private, specialty hospitals and creating linkages to respond to this. So certainly everybody's beginning to understand and demonstrate that they understand that collaboration across sectors is what's going to get us over this hump. And there's a key role for government in leadership, in how we describe the problem, in how we articulate the solution, and how we execute. There's a key role for government there. And I think, thankfully, our mayor and our governor are doing that work. And, I'm really speaking just to New York City, and I hope we recognize how fortunate we are for the resources that we have, that as a people we come together and we have the leadership that we can rely on to get us through this.
Thank you, ladies. It was such an amazing session. There is a last question that our team is asking, and it's other members from our team that are texting us because they have also their own thoughts and questions. We just want a thought on the homeless people in New York. You might have an answer, you might not be directly involved. What is happening in those times for homeless people in New York City?
Well, I can't tell you. I'll let Jackie speak to what the city's doing, but I think to me, when this first happened with COVID, the number one group that I thought of was the homeless, the displaced. I understood as a citizen of New York City the reason why mayor took so long. We have over 100,000 children that are in shelter, that are in in sort of temporary housing. They're not in in an environment where they can come in and go as they please. And to me, it just spoke volumes that this particular pandemic is particularly cruel. I have friends of mine who are educators who've said, I have a group of kids that I haven't heard from since it happened because they don't have a computer. They don't have a phone, and they're in shelter, and I don't know exactly where they are. It's heartbreaking that this particular pandemic will have pushed those who were maybe finding school a place of rest, a place of normalcy, to be now no place for them. And so for me, I'm very proud, and I know Jackie's going to talk about this. Everyone knows Jackie is my advisor and mentor in life. But for me, it was particularly for me, that was the first group I thought about, is the unseen people. You get on a train and people just don't see them. But these are the ones they don't have a place to shelter. They don't have a place to go. And they're our most vulnerable.
So totally agree with your description there, Deborah. And I'm just going to say, if you identify a gap, please email genderequity.nyc.gov, right? And I don't know if I gave you that correctly, but I can follow up. The important thing is that you identify for us the gap. I think it's genderequity@nyc.gov, but I'll clear that up and we can send it in over as follow-up.
Sure.
The homeless are able to access the same services as everyone else. If you're ill, we are responding, those who are in shelter, clearly more readily identified. and they have the same medical services and access to the same medical services as everyone else does. We have a rich network, Health and Hospital Corporation, a rich network of medical services. And so I just can't speak any more highly of my colleagues at the tremendous work they're doing to really stem the tide of this pandemic. But we clearly will have gaps. We will miss things. So please reach out to us if you do. And as I said, if you identify things that we're missing, we'll work to get a response to you. And I am going to follow up with the email address that would be best for us to collect that information.
Yes, thank you, Jacqueline. We'll take all the information that you said, and we will be sending it to the viewers of today and our broader audience with all the links. And regarding the homeless, it's, it might not be one of them reaching out directly, but us, if we know a homeless person that we pass by every day, now is the time to just stop, like when you're going for a walk down your home, and with the social distancing, you can still, have a conversation and ask if the person needs help. We said at the beginning that it would be such a passionate session with two great women leaders. Thank you so much, ladies, and we will be on those conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion on a weekly basis. So we count on you on coming back and visit us and being our guest speakers in the next weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Healthy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.